Now we're going to cover case. Case is what you're wondering about if you're wondering whether to use he or him or I or me when you're asking yourself that kind of question, which of these pronouns do I use? You are asking yourself about which case the pronoun should be in. So case is an attribute of pronouns and other words, but in English it's pronouns where this gets to be a problem for people. Now, the problem is it actually isn't that difficult to figure out whether to use he or him or I or me. You just have to know something about what the pronoun is doing in the sentence, and that's why people have a tough time, because they don't know about what nouns of any kind can be doing in a sentence. So first, let's line up these pronouns by their case. And the two cases that we're going to deal with are the nominative case, which nowadays is sometimes called the subjective case, and the accusative case, which is sometimes called the objective case. I'm going to stick to the older terminology. Now, the nominative pronouns are I, you, he, she, we, and they. These are the pronouns you would use if the pronoun was going to function as the subject of a verb. So you say, I want coffee, not me want coffee. Now the accusative pronoun, these line them up to correspond with their nominative opposite numbers. So me, you is the same in both the accusative and nominative. Him is the accusative form of he. Her, us, them. Now, this is really, right here, everything, in a way, you need to know about the case of pronouns. If the pronoun is going to function as a subject or a subjective complement, use the nominative case. And if it's going to function as any kind of an object, whether the object of a preposition or a direct object or an indirect object, any kind of object, you use the accusative case. And that's it. Now the problem is, of course, for most people wouldn't know an object of a preposition or a subjective complement if it came up and said boo to them. So the problem is that you need to know these other concepts in order to figure out which case your pronoun should be in. So let's just look at a couple of examples. Please lunch with our guest, and now should you say I or me? Now, a lot of people have this sense that the nominative case, for example, if you're looking at I and me, they just have this sense that the real difference between them is that I is somehow classier. It just sounds a little, sort of high class. So some people would say, please lunch with our guest and I, and think that that sounds very polite. But classiness has nothing to do with case. These are two distinct issues. So what you want to ask is, what is this thing that's going to fill that blank? What is its grammatical function? Is it a subjective complement? Is it a subject? Is it some kind of an object? Please lunch with our guest and now. What is the this is a preposition, with. What is its object? Well, in fact, it has two. Because we have this conjunction here. It's our guest, and suppose it were Billy. The two objects of with would be guest, Billy. Two objects. And similarly, well, I've given it away. What's here is the object of a preposition. And so it should be, please lunch with our guest and me. Or with our guest and us. It shouldn't be with our guest and I. one, you know, it's not really a trick, but one thing you can do if you're still feeling a little queasy about this, is you can just rip out this other stuff and ask yourself, well, which is correct? Would I say, please have lunch with I, or please have lunch with me? And native speakers will, I don't think they would be very apt to say, please have lunch with I. That just sounds very abnormal to a native speaker. So, but that is one trick, if you will, that you can use if you're not so hot about figuring out, well, is it the object of a preposition or what? So this should be in the accusative case. So me, us, so on. Blank grammarians must endure. So the question here, suppose it were the first person plural, supposing we were asking, is it we grammarians must endure or us grammarians must endure? And the answer comes by looking at what this thing does in the sentence. And it is functioning as the subject. Must is the verb, and blank grammarians is the subject. And of course, you would say we grammarians. We is the nominative case, and that's what is appropriate for subjects. And again, we can pull out grammarians and ask yourself, would you say we must endure or us must endure? And again, a native speaker and other speakers, I hope, would say we must endure. So this would be we grammarians must endure. And this final example I'm giving here, the culprit is blank. The culprit is, should we say him or he? The culprit is him or the culprit is he? Well, we have to look at what's going on here. What is going to go into this space? And the only thing that it can be is a subjective complement, because is a linking verb or a copulative verb, right? And what follows is always going to be a subjective complement, or almost always, with very few exceptions. So the culprit is not him, but he. The culprit is he. Now, granted, in conversation, probably that might strike many people as very formal sounding. It may even strike them as wrong, but they are wrong. And one way to remember this is if you're answering the phone and somebody says, you know, may I speak to Johnny Jones, please, and you are Johnny Jones, and you don't say, this is him, right? Unless you want to sound like a gutter snipe or something. You say, this is he. And that's exactly the same. He is the subjective complement. This is he. The culprit is he. So if you know really, if you can identify subjects and subjective complements, you can never be that confused about case, because those things go in the nominative case, and everything else, because if it's not that, it's going to be an object of some kind. Everything else goes in the accusative. So to know what case it is, you have to identify subjects, subjective complements, and objects, and that's it.